Hello, and welcome back to my podcast. Today we're here with Miss Burley. She is a teacher at Roxbury High School, and we are just going to get to know her, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the teacher shortage as she does teach the tomorrow's teachers at Roxbury High School. So who are you and what do you teach at Roxbury High School?
I'm Deb Burley. I teach our TV production, media courses, and a new course called Tomorrow's Teachers.
Yeah, I'm in that class, so it's awesome. What kind of person/teacher would you describe yourself as? And how do you think that your students would describe you if someone asked them about you?
That's always an interesting question because it's like what you perceive yourselves to be and what the world perceives yourself or your students. I think students refer to me as like their school mom. I definitely care deeply about my students and their success. Pretty laid back. Very knowledgeable in a variety of different, majors, being that I studied broadcasting, but and teach the media courses, but I also, have a lot of focus on education. So I think overall people would say I'm approachable, and that I care a lot.
Yeah, you're very open. She's in a class right now, but we're still doing this.
I love the excitement.
So, did you originally want to teach, or did you just go into this blinded?
Oh my goodness, I have wanted to teach since I was a little girl. Always played school, would always ask for extra worksheets. I was terrible in math, and I didn't know how I would ever be an elementary school teacher because I knew math was a part of it, and I was like, oh God, how can I do this? And then when I went to college, I found out you had to double major, and that was overwhelming because you had to pick a subject area. Thankfully, I was able to pick communications, and I actually ended up falling in love with broadcasting and communication. So although I started out as an education major, I kind of went about it in a very roundabout way. So I graduated with a degree in broadcasting, and then got a master's in corporate communication, and then pursued my dream to be a teacher. Really, it came down to the point that I was pregnant with Natalie, who is now 18. And as soon as I had found out I was pregnant, I said, one day this kid is going to challenge me, and they're not going to want to do something because they're scared to challenge themselves. And I knew at that moment I had to go take the teaching exam and do this because I wanted to be a good role model for my own children.
Yeah. How long have you been teaching at Roxbury High School, and how do you think your teaching career has been going so far, in your opinion?
Okay, I've been here for 12 years as teacher, 18 years as an employee. So before teaching, I was doing another job. How has my teaching career evolved? I feel like I don't want to say I was pretty terrible in the beginning, but I struggled to kind of get the curriculum where it needed to be. It kind of came in without any knowledge of what our program was, and I really had a lack of resources available. I had 4 computers and 120 kids to teach, so that was really hard. But I think we've developed a really good program, and I know for a fact that I'm preparing my students for the most competitive, media programs in the country. And now I know, I'm very confident with our Tomorrow's Teachers group that they're going to be very well prepared for their college experience as well.
Do you think that the resources at Roxbury High School have improved since you've been teaching here to be able to better your students and their education?
So I think there was a point where we did have a big improvement. I think having the Google access and everybody having Chromebooks has definitely improved, student participation and getting them to get stuff done. That's a good trick question though. For my broadcasting classes for TV, I don't think I've been provided the resources that I really need to take that course to the next level. But in regard to the Tomorrow's Teachers course, they seem very willing to contribute to make it happen. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, because broadcasting, you need all this like equipment, which is like really expensive. But at the same time, it's like you want to give those students a chance to be able to further their interests and stuff like that. With our class, is because we need more educators in this world. So I get why they're putting in a lot of resources for our class.
It's hard. You really have to. I didn't realize how much you have to advocate to get the resources you need. I mean, really, teachers get $100 a year. I have 100 and something kids. So the amount of money that I spend outside of here on my students, whether it's bringing in bagels or even candy, we're doing a project in our marketing and the media class where we're rebranding gum. Well, I brought in all different types of gum. And I'm looking, I'm like, all right, that's another $10, it's another $20. And even my kids are surprised, when we're at the checkout counter, they're like, gosh, Mom, this job of yours costs you a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's not like they're paying you this massive amount of money to be able to be spending this. I feel like, in my opinion, if you're going to give teachers such a short limit on how much you give them to spend on their classes for the whole year, but only pay them this little, your salary should be going up for how much you have to advocate for the kids and how much you have to put your own time and money towards your students.
And I don't think people realize what limited resources you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a pencil sharpener in my classroom that after 4 years, it has kicked the bucket. That pencil sharpener was like $75. So out of my order for the year, that's just one pencil sharpener. That doesn't include all of the other little things like tape or pencils or pens or whatever you might need.
Yeah. So going on top of the resources and treatment at Roxbury, how do you think that Roxbury High School treats you as a person and also an educator and the rest of your coworkers as well? Do you think they treat you good, or is there some negative sides of being a teacher at Roxbury High School?
I think there's always a negative, just, in regard to how the profession is respected in our community. I don't think there's a lot of respect for the incredible impact we have in the lives of students. We spend sometimes a lot more time with you guys than your own parents do through the years. You look at how many hours you've logged in classroom, all of those people have had a profound impact on your life. From a support standpoint, I think the district supports us, I guess, the best way they can. But personally, I feel like our administration, at least in the building, my immediate supervisor and our principal, I feel like they are personally supportive. But we're also confined by, rules of a contract and what we can and cannot have. Like, we don't have a level of flexibility that other professions have. Like, I can't work from home if my kids don't feel good today. That's not an option. And I think in the future, that's what I see the struggle being, that teachers really don't have that flexibility. So we're going to have to think about how we're going to make that happen.
Do you think that contract will change in the years coming with flexibility or even other rules in that contract?
So I think as we see more of a demand, it will have to change, right?
The more they go into advocating for these rules to change, it'll change over time.
I think it'll be a cultural change. I think the state of Texas is right now looking at a 4-day work week for schools, for teachers. And when you see that, that's, pretty, Miss Brother might picking up and going to Texas. That's pretty enticing because it gives you, flexibility that you wouldn't necessarily have.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have never thought about is we've got all of this technology, all of these resources, and we're still working on the same amount of school hours. So that hasn't changed. And I think we need to rethink the school schedule, and how much we're able to accomplish in this amount of time.
Yeah. So going on about the teacher shortage, because I know you advocate for that a lot. You talk about it a lot during our class because we are educators. We have to know what we're going into. What are your emotions, thoughts, opinions on the teacher shortage going on right now?
I think it's really alarming. I'm worried about our education system. I think of some amazing students who will be teachers, and they are not even exploring this career path because of the money involved in our salaries. To texted my daughter an internship that I saw that she can do while she's at college that is more than my salary. And I think she was kind of shocked. So when I see things like that, it is insulting for the amount of education that I have put in, to be the most knowledgeable person ever. You want the best people teaching your children when you think about it, right? It's the influence, it's the biggest influence in their life during the school day. So I do have concerns. I don't know how we're going to fund it as a state. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of ways we can get the money. If you look at the larger government issue, we're sending money to other countries to fight wars when, maybe we should be investing in our people, in our education system, making colleges and universities more affordable for people who are, taking the ultimate sacrifice of service. I mean, the job is a service to the community. It's a calling. And we need to start recognizing people who really care about our growth. I always say education is the foundation of our future. Everybody needs to learn, no matter what job you're in. We all need teachers. So it's not just learning to, your ABCs or to be, friends with people or learning manners, right? We are creating our future society.
Yeah, that was a big point in my last article that I wrote, was saying my main statement was teachers are the foundation. They start everything. They are the people who taught our first responders, policemen, firemen, nurses, doctors, surgeons, the president, the vice president. They taught everybody.
Like everybody has an opinion on school.
Yeah. Teachers taught everybody that has a higher ranking than teachers do in society, which doesn't make sense because they taught you everything you need to know to be able to make this amount of money or to have this title or to be this big important person in society. But why do teachers get little attention? Why do they get such little pay? Why are they not advocated more in our society when they are such an important role for us? So I just think that it's kind of diminishing the career to be an educator, kind of like they're saying that, not that it's embarrassing, but it's like, why would you go into it knowing that society does not see you as important as all these people that teachers do teach? So I don't get it.
I think one of the challenges is if you think of your own brain development, right? We don't have our full, potential until we're like 26. So when you're going through school and you have perceptions of what your school experience was like, you don't have a fully developed mindset. So I think when we reflect on what school was for us compared, later in life, we look at it through a very different lens. But if you become a teacher, you definitely see all of the things that you didn't see as a student, and you realize how much effort that teacher has been making to provide for you and your classmates, not to mention all of the other responsibilities they have. So I hope people realize those are the heroes. Those are the people kids should be looking up to. I know there's a huge influence on, the sports stars of the world, and we're investing a lot of money in that. I think it's just time to refocus and build from our foundation.
Refocus our priority in teachers. How do you think that Roxbury High School runs their school recently with the shortage of teachers, like getting subs or even like just filling the classroom with a person to be able to teach our classes? Because I know when I interviewed some students for my podcast, sometimes they said they would enter a class and there not even be a teacher in there. They'd go into the class 20 minutes, 30 minutes, they would go in and there wouldn't be a teacher there until they had to go to the office and say.
So I think it's hard. I just learned that the new requirements for substituting are that you have to be an education major. I didn't realize that. Like, it used to be if you have 60 college credits, you could do it. Now it's 30 college credits and you have to have, proof that you are an education major.
Which is like hard to come by because no one wants to get into the education career. So how are we going to find subs underneath those requirements?
And if you're exploring it, say I studied business and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't sit in this cubicle, or I need other interaction and I want to do something different. You can't even explore it briefly to see if it's the right fit for you. So that needs to be like the first thing that we fix. As far as the actual shortage of teachers, it's going to be very competitive. Districts are going to be using their salary guide to entice young professionals to join them. That 5-year tenure mark, that's a long time to wait for tenure. They're going to have to look at that. Maybe tenure will go back to 3 years to secure employment. We're going to have to really think about this, because I got to tell you, our young professionals are real go-getters. People talk more now than ever. Information's accessible, and nobody's going to settle, right?
Yeah.
If I can make $10,000 more, working next door, and I'm, got some, big ideas for myself, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's natural. I would want my students to do that.
Yeah, to look out for yourself.
Negotiate
Whatever's best for you.
Negotiate the best deal.
Yeah.
But it is proving to be a challenge for us. It's hard to get people will lose some candidates right at the last minute because they've gotten a better offer, and good for them, bad for us. But we have to give people something to want to work here.
Yeah, it's hard to be able to go into this profession when there's so many restrictions, and that some school districts are very strict on the requirements at school, which I think need to be uplifted with the shortage of teachers. I feel like they should be able to see that and say, let's change this rule. Let's make it easier for people to come here. Let's make it easier for people to become teachers or subs even, because I know that a lot of schools need subs. I have a teammate on my softball team who goes to West Orange. I don't even think they have 20 teacher staff members. They are so short, and the requirement with substitutes needing to have an education major is almost killing them. Like they might have to shut down their school, and she doesn't know where she would go to school at anymore.
Right.
So it's not only affecting teachers or the school district, it's affecting students on their education as well.
It is, and that's when parents are going to realize it, right? When it's your kid who's not getting the education, then you're going to step up. But when everything's okay, like,
they
looks
sit
good.
back.
It's funny, like years ago, there was an issue where we were going to change transportation, right? There was talk that they were going to outsource transportation. More people showed up at that Board of Education meeting because they didn't want to have to drive their kids to school, and they wanted to know their bus driver than they did when we were getting ready to lay teachers off, because we were going to have a budget cut. And I remember walking into that room, and there were so many families there to support their bus drivers. And the day we went forward with this reduction in force, letter that was going out, and I didn't see that same thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, people care more about their bus drivers. Now, granted, that's the first child's experience, and I definitely think the bus drivers should be in district and part of our team. But like, they don't even, it's what's convenient for people at the time.
Yeah.
Right? So that impacted them. But they don't realize, the struggle and the impact it is to retain good people here.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people think the teacher shortage, they think of just only the teachers, when really it's affecting students more than I think the teachers are, because last year when COVID hit and I was virtual a lot, I had classes online, and it was just like, okay, look on Google Classroom, do this slideshow, that's the end of class. But I wouldn't retain any of that information that was given to me. I would just, like a dead person, go on Google Classroom, type all the information out, and put it aside like I didn't even learn anything, because I'm not getting talked to, I'm not getting it inputted into my head. And now today, with the teacher shortage, a lot of students that I interviewed didn't even know that it was happening, and they were like, a light would go in their head, be like, oh, that's why I didn't have a sub, or that's why I didn't have a teacher last Friday, because they were out and they didn't have a teacher to cover them, or that class just had a teacher who wasn't there at the time, who took a break, because I know there's a lot of burnout with teachers now, which is also another thing that needs to get fixed with burnout teachers, because I see it all the time on TikTok, which is another resource I'm exploring right now, which I think is actually very helpful to explore on TikTok.
I do love the teacher TikToks.
Yes,
pretty funny.
They're very funny, but a lot of them are also educational on burnouts and the teacher shortage, which I think I'm going to input on my next article, because I feel like it's a different perspective, because they explain it in a funny way where people can laugh online and then talk about it with their families.
Right.
And then they think after saying, oh, that's actually a serious topic. Let's talk about it.
But shockingly, the perception that a lot of folks have, a lot of teachers have lost their job for posting some of these concerns, and really letting people know what it's like.
Yeah.
It isn't easy, right? It isn't easy, especially at the elementary level. You definitely have more parent contact. There's a little bit more communication on a regular basis with families, and that can be really challenging depending on the dynamic of your classroom and how demanding the parents are. I think as we have more technology and more ability to communicate, people are communicating their concerns more, but that's something we're going to have to look at. There have just been way too many teachers, terminated because they're putting their opinions out there. But we never really have a place to tell people what it's like because, you're supposed to be like the cookie cutter teacher who just loves your job and the kids, and you're positive and happy all the time. And it's not always that, rosy
sunshine, rainbows,
unicorn kind of day. Some days are really, really hard.
Yeah, I definitely think that they should make it easier for teachers to be able to explore their career. Like, in my one podcast, I talked about the EDTPA, which is the test that teachers have to take, and the Governor Murphy actually eliminated that test in New Jersey and have only said that performance assessment can be allowed for teachers to be able to pursue the education career, which I think is a fantastic idea because I know how hard that test is and that it costs $300, I say, that I saw when I was researching it, that it costs $300. Who can pay out of their pocket $300 plus take a really hard test? Like, it's a lot to become a teacher. Like, you're already stressing out before you even walk into a classroom. Sometimes you're taking that test and you don't even know what you're going into.
I do think there should be some indicator for your knowledge, right? Like, we need to make sure. But
the performance test, I think, should be observed by many high-level teachers who have taken the EDTPA before, and I think they really need to observe them to a high degree. Like, different people should observe different areas of their skill, but I don't think that a test should, it's just like with state testing. I don't think a test should define how knowledgeable you are. There are different ways to show your area.
The testing industry is big money, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that now we see colleges, they need to fill their beds and their seats, so they're lowering the standards when it comes to testing or not requiring testing. But that is big business. So the testing industry makes a ton of money off of our school districts and our students and then our teachers, right? The same test company that will test you guys is the same testing company that will test me as a teacher. Again, I do believe you should have a basis of knowledge, but so much of teaching is the preparation programs that you do in college, and then the experience of dealing with things in the classroom. You're always learning as a teacher. So I know years ago they had raised our test score to be a little bit more competitive. Didn't impact things, I think, as much as they thought. People did raise the bar and worked harder to study for the exam, and now we're changing things up again because we are in a desperate need for people. But in that desperate need for people, you still want to be selective and have the best people teaching your
You don't
kids.
want a dead brain person coming into the classroom just to be like that adult authoritative for students. You want somebody to be able to educate your kids or your students.
So if you're attracting the best professionals, you need to have an attractive package for them, through healthcare and their salary and benefits. And you also have to have a really positive school culture. We might not get paid a lot of money here compared to other districts. I could go to Randolph or Mount Olive, walk out the door right now and make $10,000 more. That's $1,000, more a month. That's pretty awesome. That would certainly help ease some of my personal stress. But at the same time, our culture in this building is different, right? Our students I think we've got great kids. We seem to have a good cooperative experience with our administration. There's some good communication, but we can always do better.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask like a couple last questions that are just to talk about like the issues and like some of the reasons why we have a teacher shortage. So when I interviewed some of the students in a hallway, they said they think that the issues are salary, type of district they're in, town, and students' behavior, which has been an alarming topic because I heard that out of every single one of my interviewees was the students' behavior or the lack of effort, their sometimes crazy behavior, and just overall their personality or an attitude coming into the classroom sometimes. So what do you think about some of the reasons for the teacher shortage and if the students' behavior is also another factor on why teachers are leaving?
So I don't think it's completely indicative of the students' behaviors. I think a lot of it is the perception we have as teachers, or perception we have of teachers. So when someone tells me, and this has been told to me, you're really just a babysitter. I'm like, okay, I'm a babysitter with a really solid education. Like, I'll tell you this much, if I was babysitting, I'd make a whole lot more money than I am now for the amount of hours that I put in and the commitment that I have. So I think it really is, salary and opportunity. Here's a profession that you're growing learners. We really need to make sure our teachers continue to grow as learners and we're giving them the opportunity to pursue their passions and interests, because if the teachers, feel fulfilled, then they're going to want to share that knowledge with other students. So maybe it's looking at a better benefits package when it comes to helping with tuition. Maybe it's having some more flexibility when it comes to bringing your children freely to the school district to make that easier, whether I'm an elementary school teacher or a high school teacher. I think that money and how the community respects educators and that's a driving force, because if you have a school community or a town that really is passionate about education, not just sports, not just music, education, then you're going to have less discipline. Because parents are going to want their students to be successful and nobody's going to tolerate it. And parents are going to be holding their own children accountable. So, there are people who send their kids to other locations for high school, right? They might choose a private school, they might choose to homeschool them or whatever they decide. They do that because they're looking at the, environment, and they want what's best for their child. So we need to provide what's best for every child.
Yeah. When I was younger, like you, I would play teacher with my brothers. I put post-it notes up, like teaching them lessons, and not math because I was bad at math too. I would teach them how to write a story. I lay out the introduction, rising action, falling action, all of that good jazz. I was such an English teacher when I was at the age of like 7. My mom has a picture of me with post-its teaching my brothers. It was so funny.
Save that for your first back to school.
I'm just going to show that picture. And when I was growing up, the teacher shortage has been happening for decades, and people just haven't seen it because it hasn't been at its peak of.
So think about this.
Bad.
If you're a teacher, you're in that job for 30 years. So when you think of like my generation, I'm 46, I think, and you think of if someone held that job for 30 years, they started when I was in high school, right? So now those people are just heading off to what comes next.
Yeah.
So when you can secure something for 30 years, every 20 to 30 years, depending on our life cycle, or maybe now that we're living longer, we might be working longer, 40 years, you're going to have the issue. So we are at a pivotal point where, people don't stay in positions long anymore. A lot of people jump around. A lot of people are more transient where they're moving to different parts of the country. So if you have a spouse that's working and they're traveling for their business, you might have to, move to a different state. But if I've secured that job for 30 years, like you're waiting a long time before you're able to get in that spot. Now we've got a lot of people who are at that age. And to be honest, when you're not going up on the salary guide and healthcare expenses are costing more, We've got teachers in our building who are making less money now than they were 5 years ago. So, you know, it becomes defeating. I'm like, why would you work in a job where you're making less money every month? It seems stupid, right? Like, nobody would do that. But we're expected to do that because we care so passionately about children.
And that's why when growing up, I started to question, like, if I really wanted to be a teacher because of all that was happening around the teacher environment and culture of becoming a teacher. And just sometimes I'd hear that teachers are not getting the respect, not enough pay, and just the behavior of not only, like, the staff, like the students, and just also about healthcare is, like, a big thing too with, like, teachers and stuff like that. So I felt like, is this really the job that I want to go into? But I also have a passion for educating others and teaching kids or adults that don't want to advocate for themselves and educate themselves. I want to bring that out of them. I want to bring out their good in them. I want to bring out their passion for learning. I want to be able to have someone look at me, say they don't like learning, and I say to them, I'm going to make you like learning. By the end of the year, I'm going to make you like it. I'm going to make you be studying every night for 2 hours. I'm going to make you do it. So that's why, like, I want to be a teacher. I want to pull it out of them. I believe myself that I can.
Well, you also recognize how valuable the teacher is. To the experience. It's a partnership. It's the teacher, the student, and the family. And we just have to get everybody back on board. Parents are also, you know, dealing with a lot too, right? There's a lot of stress being a parent today. But it is a partnership and a unity, you know, to grow every child to achieve their personal success. Not every child has that family support system, right? So it's a challenge, but I don't want people like you to give up because of what you hear, because I could be making a lot more money, but I might not be as happy. You know, and I had that conversation with a student today, like, you really need to think about it, because are all of those other things necessities in life, or is your happiness more, you know, most important? I mean, you got to pay your bills. You have to be able to afford to live in the community you work. That's natural, right? You should be able to, on a teacher's salary, live in the town that you work in. And in some cases, people can't do that because it costs so much. And we need to look at that kind of stuff to make sure we create community.
Well, I wanted to thank you for being on my podcast. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day, your class, to be able to be on my podcast to talk about this issue.
Me. Right. And I'm excited that, you know, your passion will continue to drive you and help other people in the future.
I hope this podcast can really bring light to some of the students' minds about what's actually happening in their, not only their state, but their town, and even their school. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great job.